everyone. We are the EWCC. We are back this time after 3 weeks, but we're not with the students. Today we are with ourselves. We four tutors are going to reflect on our activities and see how we feel about everything. So, how do you feel today?
Well, probably relieved that one of the major projects was finished, and maybe relieved, but of course we miss the students.
Yeah, I think the 3 week challenge was quite intense, for especially for the students because they really need to listen a lot and need to really drop down notes and share with us about their thoughts. And I can see that they really have written quite a lot of the notes. But yeah, in fact, I really miss them because it's also sort of my first time to see students so keen on specific activities, I think.
Yeah.
And we still have a lot of snack beverage in our center. If the Podopia member want to come back and share their updates with us, just feel free to visit us.
Yeah. Have we finished our cookies
Not
and
yet.
and chocolates? Not yet.
Yeah.
I think we prepare quite a lot of snacks and refreshment to award them, but we are quite happy to see them. They didn't really touch it a lot. Probably just some of the drinks are consumed, and then they really focus a lot in discussing and speaking during the section instead of eating snacks.
Yeah.
It is my first time to see students more preoccupied with the discussion than the snacks, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
So yeah, the challenge is now finished. So maybe we can go to the feedback that they share with us.
Yeah.
Because after the challenge, we invited the students to share with us some of their feelings and feedbacks and how they feel like improving their listening skills. So maybe let's check the data.
Yeah, so maybe Molly can share with us some of the students' feedback.
Yeah, in total we'll have 4 meetings. In the first meeting we'll talk about how it works and everybody know the logistic of this event and know what they need to do in each meeting. And we have 3 more weekly forum discussion. Each week we have a certain theme all related to psychological topics. And in the last meeting, we developed one evaluation form for students to check about their feedback on everything. So we actually find some very interesting topics. 19% of the students reflected that their biggest takeaway would be communication skills, followed by listening skills for sure. How do you say about this?
Communication rather than listening.
Yeah, like initially we thought of training them to listen,
Yeah.
but they are more on the communication aspect, which is I think which is just right, because every time we meet we made sure that they will communicate whatever they think about the podcast and their realizations and takeaways. It's like they were not really forced, but they were encouraged to talk and speak and write as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I do agree on that because sometimes listening, you don't really have any shortcut for that. The only way for you to improve is to listen more, and then based on different topics or the familiarities of your knowledge field, then maybe you will find the ability of listening will be a little bit different. But I think for communication skills, I do really see a very significant improvements from the students.
Yeah.
Like some of them, I do notice that from the first meeting, they might not even say any words.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at last, for the last topic that I still find it very impressive is that we didn't even able to finish all the topics that we prepared, because they talk a lot and share a lot for just one topic.
One question.
One question. 1 whole hour.
And I'm also very happy to see that they are really sharing very personal thoughts
Yeah.
and stories
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, which means that they feel comfortable with sharing.
Yeah.
I think this might be something that they feel unexpected because we kind of frame that as a listening challenge, but
Yeah.
it's more focused on communication. I think this would also make students feel less intense, because if you come with the aim of doing listening challenges, if you say you're going to learn, it's like a lecture, but now it's more like a community-based chatting space for the students.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned about community, because I can remember during the time that we ended already the session, we ended it and then we are expecting them to get out of the room already, but they stayed there for more than 30 minutes chatting to each other and chatting to us. It was just wonderful seeing them opening up and trying their best to speak in English language, which is foreign to them, and then you know that some are struggling but they still try their best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Quite impressive to see that they themselves, among themselves, they are speaking in English too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we did a great job in creating a community of listeners and communicators during this podcast series.
Yeah, I still remember after the first weekly meeting, one girl told us that actually she has prepared a lot of to talk, but she is a little bit hesitated, and when she is ready, when she got the courage to speak, then it moved on. So
it's quite common.
yeah, what the contrast is that in the ending session, she will be the first volunteer to talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other scale, they also report that 60% students start to take notes while listening. It's not only for listening to the podcast, but also they will take notes in the lecture as well. And then half of them master the approach to cultivate a new habit by tracking their progress every day.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think one reason why they're doing that is because you prepared really like a set of rules on the first day during the ice breaking session. You introduced the activity to them, and then you made sure that they understand the expectation, and you have like prepared some notes, like you have to fill this out, and then this is the Cornell notes that you have to be using as you listen to the podcast. So I think when you introduce this to the students, it enticed them to listen intently, like there was an intentional listening that was done, not only by listening just for the sake of listening and finishing the podcast. They really listened so much. So yeah.
Yeah, I think because normally when we listen to podcasts, we don't really make notes, but making notes is one of the way for them and also for us to know whether they're really able to understand the topic that we select for them. And I also heard one comment from, I think it's Morris. He mentioned that he is looking forward to fill up all the Cornell notebook because he found it very fulfilling to have all those notes in one notebook. So yeah, I think he will keep doing that too.
That's really impressive.
The minimum hour would be one hour listening time, but based on the feedback I received from the student, most of them will repeat to listen. Even if they miss some word or didn't catch some words, they will drag it back to the place that they missed the word to re-listen.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think I have to give the credit to you, Molly.
For creating the
for
tracker.
creating that tracker, because it was really a great one. When you conceptualize that, it challenged the students.
Yeah, and actually by the end I look at the tracker, I think the maximum minutes fulfilled by the students will be about 300 something, so which is quite a lot.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of them listen to all of the podcast, which is something that I didn't expect it at all. I thought that student would just chose the shortest one and to fulfill the 1 hour goal, but it seems that they were really motivated and would explore all the podcast.
Yeah, they might not finish the entire podcast, but they still explore all of them and see whether they like it or not.
Yeah, but I would say the design here is we ask a student to listen or explore all the episode and have the flexibility to choose which one they want to continue listening.
Yeah, or they can choose their own too.
Yeah. We don't set it as a task for them. You need to only listen to this.
Yeah.
And another fun fact is 72% reported outside of the Podopia community, they feel much more willing to present, to talk, to share in the public setting.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Oh,
but I
I
think that's
haven't seen it.
understandable because first of all, we are all strangers to each other.
Yeah.
But then they are willing to share their own personal stories, and we don't make judgment. So I think that's the point. So that's why they feel a little bit more comfortable. Unlike from what a language teacher should always do,
Yeah.
is that we don't correct them too. We just
Mhm.
listen and
Yeah.
give comments.
We don't really, because we don't have a rubric
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for their
unlike a
talk.
lecture.
Yeah. And they will feel
Yeah.
very free to express their opinions and use the language. So I guess this would make them feel much more comfortable.
Yeah, and it seems that even if the grammar is not correct,
Mm.
and sometimes they cannot express well, we as the host sometimes would say, I think what you're saying is like this, or if I understand it right, you
Yeah.
said like this, and then that's the time that they would say, yeah, that's what I mean. So
Yeah.
it was like it's easy for them to just, okay, it's okay, I can say this thing in my way anyway. If it will come to us, we could understand what they are trying to say,
Yeah.
or we can actually rephrase it in a way that it's suiting to what they really want to say.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that is also one of the way they can learn. Okay, so this is the way that I can express my
Yeah.
idea
Yeah,
that they didn't know how to express it before.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I think our students are just very kind to each other. You can feel the vibe.
Mhm.
So they will really listen to each other and look at each other when the other people are
Yes.
speaking. So I feel that it really kind of builds a strong basis for them and make them feel more comfortable in speaking in public spaces in other scenarios.
Even for some students who usually pause, stop, or stuck a little bit, but for other students, we just patiently listen to his or her speech, and if possible, we'll give our some words, help them to reorganize the sentences again.
Yeah.
So there would be, I would say, no dead air in the process.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's true. Yeah, actually having that was one of my concerns
Yeah.
before we start.
Yeah.
I was really afraid of that, but end up, this is just one of my stupid concerns.
Yeah, we have angel students.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the third very interesting fact. Actually, almost 80% of students feel that they take some psychological insights from the podcast, and they start to use those methods to comfort themselves and also help out the people around them.
Mm.
That's great. I think because of the theme of the podcast that was chosen.
It feels very personal.
Yeah.
Very
Yes.
personal, yeah.
Yeah, especially for the last topic about emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotional.
They did share a lot about like what kind of difficulties and struggle they are recently facing, and then we are all very happy to probably give some solutions and
Yeah.
feedback to them.
Yeah.
And I think from the varieties of podcasts we chose,
Mhm.
there are people like they kind of gave suggestions from different perspectives. I think the
Yes.
students could just pick up the one that they feel could adapt to their lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. You mentioned about the last session that we had, and it was like, it's very, very relatable to most of the
Mhm.
students. Most of
Mm.
them are facing some psychological or maybe emotional issues at the
Uh-huh.
moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, and the doctors, the guest, and then the podcast are very helpful in providing some solutions to those
Mm.
Yeah.
issues. So yeah, I think it's very relatable to them.
Mm.
Thank you, Kate, for that.
Yeah.
Because you selected the theme.
Yeah, and I think by that time we were having our last meeting, it was also almost time for them to have their midterm. So
Yeah.
while lots of them actually mentioned that they were worrying about their midterm exam, but then also some other students, they reflect that they never worry about their exam.
Yeah.
So yeah, they share their ideas and solutions for dealing with those kind of academic nervousness too.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then actually before this project, we made a questionnaire to ask their listening readiness. So it's kind of a survey, and they need to take it in the beginning and also in the ending. So we make a kind of contrast and comparison.
Mm.
We find that there is a question when you have a conflict in conversation, or sometimes you save some ideas or opinions that you disagree with, what would you respond? And in the beginning part, 74% choose to first verify everything and try to defend for themselves with strong evidence. But after this project, we find out the figure decreased to just 33%. So instead, 50% of them prefer to listen to others' opinion first and with strong patience and ask for the further clarification. So we find that this kind of big change.
It's a very interesting finding.
Yeah, and also very meaningful too, because I think that's the meaning of creating a community.
Yeah.
Where people are being inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think holding a strong opinion or having a craft approach that we learned from the academic English classes might not work that well in real life. So I'm quite happy to see them being more open-minded to different types of opinion rather than just defend on themselves and see, question about other people's experiences or position. I think this could be a quite interesting and an alternative approach in nowadays society maybe.
I was just thinking that probably by listening to the podcast and listening to the discussions of other students made them realize that, hey, there are other insights or perspectives out there which are much better than my perspective. So maybe I should pause sometimes and listen to them instead of just being aggressive towards other people's perspective, because they might be making a point as well. So and we made sure in the group that when someone is talking, we respect what they're saying, and then some students have different viewpoints, but they said it in a respectful manner. So which is, I think, one of the things that we made sure during the sessions. So
and sometimes we build a kind of mutual understanding. When they talk about, when they listen to others' idea, they start to put themselves into others' shoes.
Yeah, right.
And another fun fact is quite a little bit tricky, because the question is how easy it is for you to be focused on a very long conversation. As you know, for UMAC courses, usually the length would be 75 minutes or up to 90 minutes. So I really care about their response. In the beginning, 50% students thought it was somehow difficult, and 54% students stood in the middle because they haven't thought about this question before. It's quite understandable, but nobody chose to admit that it's very difficult for them. After this project, 50% students voted for something was somewhat easy for them, but another very contrast figure is 25% students start to realize it's difficult for them.
Yeah, so no one chose that it's very difficult before.
No
but now
one.
we have.
They are so confident about that.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
But I think that's because before, well, in a lecture environment in a university, the topic introduced by the professor will always be something that you're familiar with, or it is. We do not call it an authentic conversation because it's a speech given by the professor. But for the podcast we select, it's normally authentic or chit-chat topics, and then normally it's given by foreigners too. So based on different accent or other factors, they might find it a little bit difficult this time. That's the only way I can explain that.
And sometimes in a lecture, it's not a kind of reciprocal discussion or communication. Sometimes it's more like, as Stella mentioned, the lecture give the information and you just sit there and wait until the end of this session. But now in our meetings, it's more like you are expected to give your response to others, give your suggestion to others. So it's kind of a commitment of the.
I'm also thinking that maybe there's a lot of technical jargon in the podcast. Like there's a lot of terminologies that the students could not understand, and that is probably one of the reasons why they find it so difficult to listen for a long time. Maybe I'm thinking of that because remember during the last session when we asked them about their takeaways, what language did you learn, and there's a lot for them.
Mm.
There's a lot of language that they learn during that
Yeah.
session.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I think they might not have that much experiences of being highly attentive in a whole hour, and
Mm.
those are kind of motivated by themselves to learn either the viewpoints or the vocabulary. So I think that could explain why students now feel more challenging.
Yeah, because for
Yeah.
lecture most of the time it's just merely input.
Yeah, merely input. Mm.
And another thing I want to discuss is their identity. Before that, they didn't set themselves as a good listener or university listener in the
Mm.
beginning, but now they start to think about this question in the conversation. What's their identity?
Like, am I a good listener?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah, but I think for listening, it's not just about listening to the podcast, but also listening
Mm.
to our group discussion.
Mm.
So I think in our group discussion, they also need to have the ability of listening to others too. While sometimes we also mentioned that some of them might get stuck or need some time to clarify themselves. So this is also a little bit different from the podcast content too.
Well, for me, I'm thinking about differentiating what's listening and hearing. It's easy to just hear,
Mhm.
and it doesn't matter if you understood it or not. But I think it's nice that the students are now questioning themselves: Am I a good listener? Listener in the sense that they were able to digest what they heard, and they
Mhm.
can state whatever takeaway they had about that. And going back to what we did, we made sure that okay, you listened, and these are the questions that you have to answer. If they did not really listen, if they just heard the podcast without really digesting it, then they could not answer the questions that we gave them.
And our meeting
Yeah.
discussion also provide another platform for them to reinforce their listening takeaways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Another would be the interview question among us.
Yeah.
So, thinking about the 21 days, what were the challenges and what strategies do we employ to overcome these challenges? So maybe challenge.
It's really
Um,
hard to think for challenges because I think they are all angels.
Yeah, or maybe we can start with you as you are starting, the two of you, Kate and Molly, because when you communicated with the students and you conceptualize this activity, well, remember initially it's not like this. It's not this complicated. Initially, it was just simple, like challenging them to hear or listen to a certain podcast. We will just train them to listen to a podcast, but eventually it evolved into a more challenging one where there are challenges every session. So maybe this question we would just want to ask you, what were the challenges that you met when you were conceptualizing this?
Mm.
I still remember the first meeting we had with Mr. Ganadi because he is quite a professional in media, in market, in Podopia, not Podopia, is podcast and also YouTube video. I remember in the very, very beginning, he showed me the graduation video for bachelor degree, and I find out that he hoped that we can teach students how to make analysis of the podcast structure. That's the main point of listening. And after that, we may teach students to do a lot of straight interview and try to edit every episode by themselves. Yeah, I would say it's a great plan, but it's also a very big project-based learning. Somehow, it turned out to be a big burden for students.
It sounds really like making a podcast instead of
Yeah.
the
It's a big
topics.
project.
Yeah.
I think we also had a very initial meeting with Miranda,
Yeah.
and she mentioned about Hidden Brain, which is a podcast that is liked by a lot of our instructors in the center. And then she also mentioned about Alice once experimented with having or teaching podcast or with her students. And then at first it seems like to be a weekly discussions based on the podcast topics, and we were asked to select different episodes based on the themes. But after the Chinese New Year, I saw Molly was extremely busy. and I took a glance at her laptop. There were a lot of tables, calendars, and documents, and I knew that there would be a gigantic project, and it did turn out to be in that way.
Yeah.
Boom! Wow, that's really big.
It was really big. So,
Yeah.
well, we have to give credit to Miranda for planting the idea
Yeah.
about podcast. Thank you, Miranda, if you're listening. But all these calendars and then the
Yeah.
charts that you prepared,
Yeah.
it was just wow, Molly, what is that?
It's not really a challenge for
For
our
them.
students.
Yeah,
It's
for
a
you.
challenge for ourselves.
For us
For
and for
us.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the very initial plan is just to help students who are quite into podcasts listening, and we gather these people together to have some discussion.
Mm.
But I quite understand that most students they would be quite into the podcast, but they only listen to the Chinese version or the topic that interests them.
Mm.
So this time, I think is our maybe thing to help them cultivate a new habit by listening to the English podcast. So based on the literature I have read, people can build the 21 build a new habit in 21
1
days.
days.
So that's why I embedded and designed the daily tracking table.
Yeah, you turn that into a challenge for students to listen to a certain period.
Yeah.
We talked about you were concerned about how intensive it was at the beginning. You would need to be prepared to go to the meeting instead of some drop
Yeah.
by.
And that made us nervous when we saw the
Yeah.
plan. It was like, oh my God, will our students be able to finish until the end? So we're sure there's a lot of students who wants to start the race, but will they be able to finish until the end? It was a
Yeah.
concern, but it was like, oh, great, because we have great students, very interested students who really tried their best.
Yeah,
Mm.
this
Yeah.
is the biggest challenge we face in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? But actually, in order to provide a tailored support to students, we also support their group learning. We try to pair the student into different group, and we for tutor work as a facilitator to maybe help them learn better. And I remember after the first ice breaking, we have a short meeting and discussion with our group member. We have 4 groups in total, and make sure that everyone know the logistic, how it works in the 21-day project. And also, if they have any problem or unknown question, they can just approach the tutors, or even they can send a question in the small group, WeChat group.
Yeah.
I quite understand that in the session, in the lecture, it's a common context when after the teacher teach something, we might ask, do you understand? Is that clear to you? But this question somehow is a little bit invalid because nobody is willing to share his or her weakness. So in this case, we try to give the tailored support and put them to very a smaller group.
Yeah. I feel very lucky that we have enough people and to take care of the 16
Yeah.
16 students, and also I think comparing to having a lecturer, I think we tutors might let students feel more comfortable to talk to.
Yeah. I think in my group, there's indeed one challenge that we faced after the first session, after the ice-breaking session. One of the group members is really very shy, and he's the only boy in that group. And I think that's the reason why he's shy. Everyone are girls in the group. But aside from that, I know this boy, and he really has that personality. What strategies did you employ to overcome these challenges? Okay, there was one member in that group who is really very friendly, and then she speaks Chinese and she speaks English as well. So it's like every time there is an issue, if I feel that the other student does not understand, I would ask the student to all of them to tell me if they understood it. And this girl, she notices that the other one does not understand. She would explain it in Chinese, and that is one of the strategies employed by the group. Thank you to that girl also. And then, yeah, it was great. They finished the podcast sessions, and
Because I think before we met with our students, at first we really cannot be sure that who will be coming and how would the personality be. So even though we do have an idea, okay, maybe we will separate them into smaller groups so that we can provide personal assistance. But well, end up that they are all doing very well, and then in the ice-breaking sessions, I think it really helps us to get to know better about them, so that we make sure that each of the group will have one of the active one and will lead the group. Yeah. And I think like some of them share their interest in that. Maybe, for example, they like drinking coffee. Then we put those coffeeholic in one group, and then they end up being very good friends too.
And also, the 3 weekly forum, the structure are quite similar. So usually it starts with a takeaway sharing within the group, and it's the tutor's duty to notice or even note down some very interesting ideas from the student. So we can know some students who used to be very quiet and unwilling to share, but they can really share some very important insights. So in the forum session, when we lead our own forum this topic, and we may invite those quiet students to speak more, because we know that what they keep as their notes is very
valuable.
very valuable.
They have something to share.
So we can see from their notes they really listen and make notes, but just too shy to share in the beginning.
Right.
And maybe how do you feel about hosting the activity, recording and editing the podcast?
The editing there is a small challenge. It's because we hold this event in our writing center. So everybody sit in a rectangular shape. So in this case, we put a microphone, a recording device in the middle of the carpet, and that means the people will have different distance to the microphone. So in the editing process, I need to cut each one's speech into different clips and try to adjust the volume to ensure the consistency of everybody's talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you for the help.
Thank you.
And I think it's also a challenge for us because we are not really editing professionals
Yeah.
before, so it's also our first trial.
Yeah. At first I just felt like it was cool. So just let's do this. And then it turned out to be quite challenging at first because I'm also not a very tech person. But it seems like it's about playing between different applications and trying out. I had the experiences of volunteering in school radio station when I was a high school student, but I was blamed of not knowing how to play with the machines, and senior student just didn't like me. But now I feel like having this experiences really helped me to break the stereotype that I put on myself, so I feel more relief. I feel more able to deal with technology. I'm not I'm not a terrible
That's so
person.
funny.
I grew up. Yeah.
Even though you cannot prove to your senior, at least you know yourself that okay, I'm not the old kid anymore. Now I know how to edit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that gave us additional skill, probably, right? Imagine that from not knowing how to operate the radio thing, that must be very nerve-wracking during that time. And then now you can say that I have an idea about this, not just an idea, but a hands-on experience in editing. Yeah.
And another challenge would be actually I listen to some English podcast and they use very fancy music. So I try to do the same, but I really care about the copyright issue, right? So I try to play the garage by myself and to synthesize some different music instrument, and then I find that I don't have the talent to generate the music. So in this case, I really search online and find out the free music provided by the musician company. They state that it can be used for business purpose. So that's I pick the very opening the music.
So, how do we feel about the themes and topics?
So,
for this challenge, it is more specific about psychology
and
emotional issue, and I think it is always relatable to everyone.
Yeah.
So that's why they have a lot to share too.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, considering that they are really in the university, and some of them have come from different places, not from Macau. Some of them are really experiencing a lot of difficulties, and so I think,
Mhm.
the themes are very relatable.
Yeah.
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 I think we selected several episodes from two podcasters.
Two podcasts.
in
One
recent-
is the psychology of your 20s. I would highly recommend this podcast to all the UMacal students because the speaker can clarify everything in a quite clear, gentle, slow way, and I would regard it as a very good listening and speaking material. You can totally practice some shadowing.
For me, I selected two episodes from Finding Your Casual Magic by Unjaded Jade, because I feel her personal narratives and her interviews quite interesting, because I just don't like those teaching episodes. I don't like to be taught about what to do, but I would love to explore other people's stories. And before that, I was quite afraid of finding some slay people, some diva, like telling you, oh, it doesn't matter, oh, it just won't work out. But because I knew that for a lot of our students, it might not work out. So I think maybe stories could be much more effective in some ways. And then initially, I thought that having Unjaded Jade as someone from a different cultural background can give students a different insights to the experiences. But later I found out that a lot of the topics like she discussed about confidence and self-doubts, those are just so relatable. And some of the experiences were actually quite similar. So I feel like these are very universal topics.
Yes.
I think our student could definitely feel relatable and have some input in our weekly meetings.
Yeah, I think from the first until the last, it's all relatable. So we can see the level of engagements of the students during discussions. Yeah.
We were also being very careful in selecting the podcast material because,
Yeah.
as what Kate mentioned, we don't want to like give a life lesson to others. We are not
Oh.
one to judge, and we don't know each other's stories. So, well, yeah. So let's be more open-minded. Maybe that's the point.
So how do you feel about the students, and have you met any of them after the meetings?
Oh, I feel great talking to the students. And if you ask me, have I met any of them? Yes, one student booked an appointment with me, and it was just so nice seeing her back in that office, because before the podcast sessions, they didn't know about our office. She did not know about the office, and so she booked an appointment with me, and it's nice seeing her again.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes I also pass by the corridor and saw them, and then they really say hi to me, and I feel so happy with that.
Yeah.
Also in the bus, right?
Yeah.
I also noticed that some students become quite good friends.
Yeah. Because after our meeting, I also heard them saying probably let's go somewhere.
Yo.
Yeah, after the session or something.
So we indeed created a community.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And then, we also have something that we've learned from our students. So maybe this would be some of the concerns from the audiences, and maybe someone who wanted to join the podcast club. So the question is that, do I need to speak perfect English to be able to discuss with other people and to be able to record a podcast episode? And how can I be brave enough to express my opinions?
No one speak perfect English. Just let's say so.
Maybe the native speakers. We are not native speakers, and
Yeah.
given that most of our students are not,
Even if they are native speaker, it's not easy to speak something very confidently in public.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think this is not a podcast for showing perfect English.
Let's
It's a
see how you
point.
define perfect. And
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
as a linguist, I think that language serves for communication. So
Yeah.
The idea is are you able to communicate the idea, the thought that you have in your mind to the other person, to the person seated next to you? If yes, then you were able to communicate, I think.
Yeah.
I also find a comment from a student in the evaluation form. They mentioned that they really cherish one thing in the project is that the Podopia members actually from different major and of different English proficiency, they sometimes they will have some peer pressure. Even in their section, they are afraid of to talk, but they really grateful for our very supportive environment. Even though some are good speakers, as Stella mentioned, speaking or in English, speaking in every language, the ultimate goal is to communicate.
Communicate.
You can say that again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, how can I be brave enough to express my opinion? That's one of the questions. So I think it goes with practice as well.
Yeah.
You practice, and soon you will become comfortable speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always believe in one saying is that fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we previously have mentioned that this is not a course. We are not
No
great.
pressure, no grade affected.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's just somewhere you can really relax and express your opinions, and you are surrounded by very kind people who will not really, put you on spot or judge you for different reasons. So, yeah. So I would say, don't worry too much about others' opinions,
Yeah.
as we
Right.
mentioned in
Yeah,
our
that is one
first
of
theme.
our topics.
Yeah.
How to
Yeah.
care less about others.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about some of the starter topic from student, and we ask student what other topic do they want to explore if we hold round 2, or do you have any suggestion or something you want to share with our tutors?
Yeah.
And somebody mentioned that they really want to discuss more about the psychological topic related to romantic relationships.
Okay.
They are on the stage where they are into romantic relationships.
Relationships.
That's why.
That's adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adulthood.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And maybe it's not only about romantic relationship. Maybe just talk about how to manage the relationship, not only for the romantic purpose. It could be the parental or friendship or other relations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the second suggestion is some students want to learn the study strategies, not only for listening, but also for the reading and even the writing.
Let's just
Oh.
come to the writing center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just
Yeah.
make appointment with us.
Yeah.
You can find us on Moodle.
Yeah. And for in April, we will hold 2 workshops. One is
Yeah.
about the speaking communication by Christina, and the other one we need to will teach students how to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In an academic
Right.
context. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, people, you can join us.
Stay tuned to our
Stay
website
tuned.
and social medias.
Yeah.
Okay, the third suggestion from student is that actually they think that our topic is a little bit serious, it's a little bit too academic. They want to maybe share their hobbies, their movies, or like Korean idols. I also say
Korean
this.
idols.
How do you view this, or shall we embed that in our following activities?
This might comes up with a very big theme, but I really
Yeah.
need to think about that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like if the theme is about mental health, okay, how you take care of your mental health, because taking care of our mental health is taking care of ourselves as well. So we engage in hobbies, and then what else did they talk about?
Movies,
Movies,
idols,
yeah.
cars, shoes.
Cars and shoes,
Wow.
maybe, but those are
personal.
very specific topics, and I don't know if there are podcasts that will be talking about this, but if it's anchored on a bigger issue or a bigger theme, as mentioned by Kate, then I think we can do one podcast theme about that.
Let's see. If you
Like
want to be the
mental health.
volunteer, we can really record a podcast together.
Yeah.
Just feel free to share your thoughts with us.
Yeah. Just send a message.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and another thing
Mhm.
is, can we develop more activities for the groups? because so far we pair them to different group and they just share their takeaway of this of each meeting. So can we maybe develop more the group activities for them?
Yeah, sure. Because after all, this is just our first time, so the ultimate purpose of us doing the meeting is to record a podcast of what our student discussion, so that they can have something take away. So I think on top of that, we can do more next time.
But we still have our concern. It's more like, as I mentioned before, the student from different major, and I noticed that in one session the girl mentioned that in that afternoon she needed to have an oral defense. So sometimes we quite worried that it could be a burden for student, because initially we decide to that our group members have a pre-meeting discussion and they can totally share something or do a group discussion to share their group takeaway. But after our meticulous discussion, we find out it's actually a burden.
Okay.
And I think we also got the purpose of we want people to mingle. We want them to know each other. So we kind of question at the beginning that whether we should really focus that much on group discussion or group activities, or should that be an open discussion. So that would be one of our concerns. And it seems that there were a lot of people sign up to our this podcast challenge at first. But we kind of, because we wanted to keep that as a community-based activity, so that's why we try to limit the numbers.
We cannot include everyone. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
About the question on whether we can do other activities aside from the activities that we did, I am just thinking other forms of expression, like role playing. Maybe if they discussed all their takeaway and they probably make a scenario where they could make a role play about the podcast that they discussed. Just like, for example, during the last session we talk about how we deal with stressors, for example, and maybe the group can conceptualize or think about a situation which is stressful, and maybe they can make a role play about it. I don't know. It's also a form of expression, and by doing that they have to speak as well. Well, there could be non-verbal actions, but they still need to speak.
I think it's largely based on the topic that we are going to select for our future podcast sessions. So, like for this time, our topic is mainly about emotion and well-being. So at last, we did a sound bath given by Miranda. So thank you, Miranda, again. So this is something related. So maybe let's see. Just imagine, in case if next time we are really talking about romantic relationship as requested by the student, we can try a blind date, for example.
Sounds very interesting.
Let's
see.
Let's see. Let's see.
Thank you for the feedback.
And last request would be some students want to change their mindset. For example, how to think in an English way, or even how to keep English in their daily life. Because Macau is not a totally English speaking environment, so they want to know, can we provide some approach for them?
Yeah, I think they really should make good use of the time being here in Macau.
This
is a multilingual place.
I feel like this is less about a podcast topic.
Just I think it's all about self-discipline. You can always find some chance to immerse yourself in a certain language environment.
Right, I agree. We have international students here, and if they would befriend international students to force them to speak in English, that's one. Or speaking with some of our utility workers who are not from China, they will be forced to speak in English as well. Just speaking phrases with them, some exercising English with them could be probably helpful. Or they can also come to our office. You can book an appointment.
And we have native speaker as a teacher.
There are teachers who are native speakers.
So just step out of the comfort zone, because if you are not doing so, even if you say like you are going to the UK or US, you will just make friends with Chinese friends. And live in Chinatown and never step out of it, so no point for that.
I think this might not be something that they need to concern at the moment, but you will know how to deal with it once you are in that environment, and you will pick up the skills. to survive and to make friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that will be
So-
all of our students' feedback, suggestion, set the topic as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, given the feedback and comments provided by our students, so we are going to have our next sessions with a professional, Dr. Alfonso. So he will be giving some solutions or suggestions to our students' concern
Yeah.
given by the previous sessions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so thank you,
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank you for
Thank you for being
listening.
here.
and then we will
Yeah.
see you next time.
Yeah.
Mm.
See you next time.